On this episode of AV Week, how government regulations can impact the AV industry, what markets should AV evangelize, and how to help your clients future-proof their system. All that and more, next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 393, recorded Friday, March 8th, 2019. All the markets.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide. And by Christie Digital.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, her name is YT Lang, and I didn't scare her off the first couple of times, and she is back from 810. Welcome, ma'am.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
I am doing well. Also with me is a buddy from just due north of me. His name is Jeremy Caldera from IAS. Welcome, sir.
Hello.
And last but not least, oddly enough, because YT is on the East Coast in the States, Jeremy's in the Midwest, and Mr. Frank Pelkoffer is representing the great Western coast of the United States. Welcome, sir. He is from Utiligy.
Hello.
All right, so let's get into this. There's a couple stories here that we're going to link on this general discussion, and the general discussion is how governments can influence and impact the industry that we all know and love and work in on a daily basis. But the two stories that I'm going to link to, and I'll kind of reference each and kind of synopsize each. The first one is about tariffs coming in and out of the country, and my buddy Craig McCormick from Commercial Integrator writes a really good, exhaustive story on the impact that the tariffs that the U.S. government has put into place is impacting the dollars and cents, the cost of goods into the states. And this is not just a manufacturer makes product X, and it gets produced in China and it ships to the U.S., and then there's a 25% tariff tacked on top of that. There are other things that are kind of hidden tariffs as well. You might have a manufacturer who 100% makes all their product in the U.S. and they make enough of the product that they can have the made in the United States stamp put on it, which here in the States that is a big deal for certain segments of the industry, or certain segments of our clients. But even those products have elements that are made in China, that are produced in China, whether it's chipsets or what have you. And those elements are being tariffed as well. And so the overall cost of even things made in the U.S. are seeing significant rises in their overall costs. The other one I want to tap onto comes to us from SCN, and the fact that Audio-Technica is extending their trade-in rebate for the 600 megahertz wireless systems. Again, this is the government here in the States phasing out another spectrum of wireless transmission. I am old enough to remember the first three of these, and working for a community college where we have gone through, the college that I worked for has gone through 2 rounds of these where they have used trade-ins. They tend to use Sennheiser and Shure microphones at the college I worked at. They've done these trade-in programs simply because the government has seen it necessary to sell these off. I'm not offering an opinion here, it's just what they did. So, Jeremy, I want to start with you because you are the integrator of the group.
Okay.
When it comes to whether it's the tariff or it's the spectrum or whatever, when governments do make decisions that impact you guys and honestly impact your customers, when it comes to staying profitable, right, and you see rises in cost, let's start with the tariff one. How do you guys best handle that when it comes to you are designing a system that may not go in for a year, you may not purchase the product for 6 months, and in the interim, the manufacturer's price goes up?
So I can tell you that I have a project right now where I quoted it back in October, and this is before a lot of the stuff had even hit the fan with all the tariffs and whatnot. And we saw a lot of our manufacturers, whether it be DSP, speaker, or whatever, do major cost increases on the dealer price list, right? Even flat panels and whatnot. And so in this case, I'm taking a huge hit, which is not necessarily, it's good and bad because right now we're not even marking our equipment up much, right? It's a commodity item, right? So as far as material goes, we're making very little profit on it. I mean, not enough that we can't absorb that hit, but it's just less profit that we have, right? So now we're more important as to why we need to sell our services versus equipment. I've had a few that are kind of parts only sales, and those kind of really hurt when I got to deal with all that, right? Now that's just for those basic type things. It's okay. People expect price increases. What's interesting is a couple of my larger clients are Fortune 100s, and they themselves are seeing huge tariffs because they do a lot of business in China and whatnot. So they understand that. Smaller businesses and the smaller clients do not, and it's hard to kind of sell that. There are some instances, LED walls, for example, where I've got some LED wall quotes that I've been putting out recently, where they're actually calling out the tariff. They're not raising their prices. They're just saying, here's the price for the wall. Here's the price for the scaling and the commissioning. Here's the tariff. Okay. So I took that idea and said, oh, okay. And I just put that right on my quote too. So you're buying this, but here's the tariff costs for the LED wall as well. So that they're understanding why the price went up $10,000, right? So
Jeremy, can I ask you, are you, when you're tied to that, is it almost like a notes and exclusion where you say, here's the tariff and the tariff is subject to change?
So typically I'm just kind of, right now I've just been kind of taking the risk. I'm just putting what the tariff is in there. And I'm telling the clients that, this could change if you're not going to order it for 3 months. You know what I mean? My prices are only good for 30 days anyways in my proposal. So in that case, I'm willing to take the risk, right? Best case scenario, I would just keep the tariff if the tariff went away. And more than likely, I don't usually do that anyways. I would actually remove it from them. But if the tariff fluctuated by $1,000 here and there, and I mean, we're hopefully making enough money on a project of that size that we could just absorb that or, take that little bit of extra profit. If it went away, I'd help the client tell them to put it away. But like I said, we've got the option to reprice things every 30 days, just based on our proposal templates. With some of our customers, they make us do it for 45, but it's not that big of a deal.
What's been your client's reaction to that tariff line?
Initially sticker shock, right? Where it's just like, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that much, right? But LED walls, they're coming out of China. Everything for the LED going out of China, right? On a boat. And the first time I started quoting LED walls, the sticker shock was shipping, right? The expensive, well, you got $4,000 in shipping expenses here, right? Just for this one product. They've gotten past that, and now it's on to hey, you've got $10,000 in tariffs, right? And it's really interesting in the article where he talks about the perception of the tariffs, right? So is it temporary? Because if it's temporary, we think it's temporary, it's not really going to be stuck on the brain, which is completely true, because in a lot of cases, some of my clients have said, okay, well, this project may not happen for another 3 months. We're budgeting for it now. So that tariff will probably go away, right? And I'm just like, okay, but, you may want to budget for it to be in there, because it could go up too, right? So I know initially we had like a 7%, and then it was potentially going up to 10% in May, or I don't remember the dates and stuff like that. But I keep trying to tell everybody, just be cautious of that. So it's a matter of managing perception. And, as far as I go on my proposals, I'm putting it right in my line item. Well, I usually don't give line item pricing, but my solutions pricing where I break it out equipment and labor. Here's the equipment costs. Here's the labor costs. Here's tax and associated tariffs, right, if you will. And then here's your total.
All right. Frank, from a standpoint of, not just you guys don't sell physical hardware, you sell software, but government, whether it's net neutrality or what have you, has passed several regulations that could impact you guys. How do you then help folks like Jeremy illustrate that and kind of lay out some of the ramifications of some of these regulations, whether it's net neutrality or it's the 600 megahertz or what have you, so they can properly explain to their clients what's going on?
Well, net neutrality is not something that really affects us. And I've got some strong opinions around that. But with regard to the tariffs, it's a thing, right? Even though we're a software-based platform, there still is a need for some basic items. And, there's 25 million huddle rooms in the world. Nook, 3 USB peripherals, and a flat screen, right? And those are tied to tariffs, and we're seeing that. And in my groups that you guys are all part of, we see conversations going on, on a regular basis now. And there was a spike back in, early January when it was really, coming to bear, and people were starting to feel the effects. So my conversations with the Jeremys of the world are, well, I can help you by encouraging you to sell software instead of boxes. Drop a third of the boxes, you drop a third of the tariff. But the thing I like about Jeremy, and I wish more people thought like this, right? He's not selling transactions, right? He's selling an SLA.
Yeah.
And that's what these IT departments want to buy, right? And most of these companies are sophisticated enough that at least we're seeing, here in North America, they understand that, they have no control about what the tariffs are going to be, and and even commoditized pricing, right? The price of steel, the price of aluminum, that fluctuates anyways, right? That prices have to change just according to, commoditization. And most of these big manufacturers, they buy futures, and they could, provide some stability in those markets. But you can't control tariffs. And I would, I encourage everyone, pass it on. That's not your problem. It's not our job as integrators, and I'm not an integrator anymore, but it's not my job to act as a bank. It's not my job to act as the guy who's absorbing your taxes. It's hard enough to make a buck in this industry. Every point matters. So, sell software and you don't have to worry about that.
All right. YT, as we wrap this up on the manufacturer side, Frankie makes really good points. This is not just a U.S. problem, though. We're all here in the States, but you have issues like Brexit and whether or not that happens. And if it does, there are issues getting products in and out of the UK from the EU, let alone other places in the world, right? You have China that has put on other tariffs because of the U.S. putting in tariffs on, so there are issues getting product into China. How do you guys, as a manufacturer, work all of these global interestingness to make sure that you and your clients are not only have the product but have it at a decent price?
Yeah, sure. So I think that's really one of the benefits of being the global company, because we have we have factories in different places, we have R&D in different places, so we will be able to be more flexible to adjust the changes. But coming back to the tariff, for the timeline, actually it started in around September last year, and it started with 10%. So as a manufacturer for A10, even though our high-end products like video matrix, HD-based T over IP control system, we manufacture in Taiwan, but still there are some portion of the 2-port, 4-port HDR, HDMI splitters that are manufactured in China. So those will be impacted. So it started in September last year with 10%. And as a manufacturer for Q4 last year, we stay with the same price list. We absorb the cost by ourselves. So you can imagine how much that impact as a manufacturer like us, that's 10%, without margin, without P&L. And then moving to Q1 this year, that's when we adjust our price list. We increase our price list. But at the same time, echo back to Tim, what just mentioned, the benefit of us being global is, so we move some of the product lines from China to Taiwan. Even though there's still increase in the cost, but compared to the tariff, it's not that many. It's not that much. So for example, even though it's not prohibited, but for example, one of our product line is called LCD KVM, the keyboard mouse video switch. We moved that from China to Taiwan. And in January this year, we were still watching because originally it was supposed to be 25% starting March 1st, but it got pending. So, but at the same time, we're still watching, looking closely to the news, to the information that government is releasing, because if the 25% is really going to happen, we have to think about it. Because you can imagine, again, we have so many internal meetings about just how to increase our cost. But I have to say, changes happen all the time. Echo back to Frank, some things are not the things that we can control. So I'll say it's a matter of fact how fast we can react and how we can communicate with our partners. So last year, our VP, Holly Garcia, sent emails to partner to make sure that we are fully communicating with our partners about the tariff. And one last thing that echo back to Jeremy is I really like how Jeremy had an extra tariff information on. I think that's really smart. And it can actually make the customers understand and feel like this is the tariff impact. It's not like the increase that we want to increase or things we can control.
And that's not easy to do either, because I can only do it on things like my LED walls, because they're the only people who are calling it out, right? Because I've got my other manufacturers who just put it into the price increase. So I don't know really what is a tariff and what's not part of the tariff of the price increase. And I think we've said this before on another show I was on with you, Tim, is that, I got all these price increases from X, Y, and Z manufacturers, but I doubt that if the tariffs go away, that my prices are going to go down.
You might want to keep like a copy of last year's and this year's.
No, I keep them all. It doesn't mean they're going to change anything.
But you can at least say, "Hey, dude."
I would argue with that. I might argue with that, Jeremy, because we're at the end of the day we're talking about commoditized products, and the price will. Adam Smith's invisible hand will reign ultimately, even if they hold the price post tariff for a quarter or two. But I also think that adding it I'm with YT, I think adding it as a line item will bring the political pressure, because it's not you, right? You can point the finger at the government. And, here in the United States, some would argue that we don't have a voice, but that's the only voice we have. And I think when people can identify the actual cost of the tariffs, and it's not some talking head on cable TV, with political blather, but this is where the rubber meets the road. Here's a transaction and here's the actual cost. I know this is happening across a bunch of my integrator friends, and people are shocked. I think, like what you said, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, this is actually real. It's not something I heard about on cable news. This is real. And maybe we're seeing at least the U.S. government back off this a little bit, because it is permeating across all industries, and
what's
the
interesting,
public is seeing that.
Before I line itemed it, I would even say that to a few people. Oh man, some of these prices went up because of the tariffs, and I got they looked at me like I was crazy, like I was being a talking head. You know what I mean? And just
or you were trying to get an extra 10% out of them.
Right. Just blaming this, right? But now that I'm calling it out, saying, nope, this is the tariff fee, and it's got a specific dollar number to it. You know what I mean? Then hey, this is real, exactly like you said, Frank.
Yeah. All right, guys. Next story. At the end of March, actually March 26th to the 28th, AVIXA Chief Executive Officer David Labuscas is heading over to London to talk to the Passenger Terminal Expo 2019. This is not the Passenger Terminal Expo, but this sort of thing is something that not only Labuscas, but other folks within the AVIXA organization has been doing really in earnest for the last year and a half, ever since they changed the name from Infocom to AVIXA. One of the key points of that, one of the pillars of that presentation, when they said, hey, now we're AVIXA, and the strategic plan has been to outreach to other industries, to other organizations, to industries that the AVIXA team and the board have identified as areas that the AV industry can help. They can help those industries and thrive in trying to get into different areas. Another one, I remember they went to the organization of stadium owners, and these are folks who are honestly nowadays they're in the entertainment business. They're not facilities managers. These folks that own stadiums are in the entertainment business, and that's how they see themselves, right? So if you're in the entertainment industry, obviously you need audio and obviously you need video. And so, the team at AVIXA have been going out and evangelizing and showing how AV can, help these organizations do what they're trying to do, whether that's connect with customers or entertain or what have you. Frank, not just passengers, this is a terminal group. What other areas do you think that AV and Avixa and honestly you guys and folks like Jeremy can go out and evangelize? What other areas and what other markets should we be hitting?
Well, every market, but I'll tell you something. As IT, so we're primarily, Utology is primarily in the meeting room space and the classroom space, right? There's 35 million meeting rooms on the planet-ish, about the same number of classrooms, and that's a pretty big market. That's a pretty good segment according to Avixa's Global Market Survey. But that's also the part that's getting commoditized the most because IT departments are inheriting those rooms. They're very happy with just good enough, put a NUC, put a couple USB peripherals, HDMI, and a flat screen, right? And I've got a room, and 2/3 of the rooms on the planet are going to be that, at least in the meeting space, right? And we're seeing that in classrooms, but add a couple USB peripherals like DocCam, right? And so you can do a lot of things that are pretty sophisticated, including a Zoom call, a WebEx call, a Microsoft Teams call, BlueJeans, out of that configuration. So there's a whole different value proposition there. But the question was, can Avixa reach out? Yes, it can. And I think for the integrators of the world, the place where there's still healthy margins and the ability to bring what we really specialize in AV is the passenger terminals. I mean, what's any airport now that's worth its weight? It's a beautiful super mall. Same with any train station, anywhere in the world. These are beautiful facilities with shops and restaurants and digital signage, and it's all about the experience, right? And it all plays into Avixa's, whole rebranding, right? And there's still good margins there. And that applies to like this, hospitality is what I would call that, generally speaking, but stadiums, venues, house of worship, etc. The meeting room space and classroom space where we really specialize, it's a whole different value proposition. And before Avixa started marketing to that segment, I would encourage Avixa to actually start really trying to understand what the challenges are with these global enterprise IT departments, because it ain't putting rooms together. I can tell you that. And so it's a whole different realm. We can get into that another time.
All right.
Now, if you like.
We can do that. YT, from your guys' standpoint, from A10 standpoint, what markets are you guys seeing as opportunities, not just for the manufacturers, but also for the integrators?
I'll say for the Pro AV, really the market is growing. So, for example, for this couple of years, besides InfoComm, we went to shows and events that focus on vertical market, like HIMSS for healthcare, WES for government, NNB for broadcasting. And the interesting thing is, like, whenever we go to these shows, even though we're talking about Pro AV, but we are seeing people asking about the control. By saying control is the PC control, server control. For example, especially in those control rooms. So that's when you'll see people are not just asking for video wall solutions or meeting room solutions. They are also looking for KVM switches or, like Frank mentioned, now docking station with USB Type-C. And I think it's a good thing that Avixa is looking at different vertical markets. So right now, I have to say, it's just not just the passenger terminal expo, but a couple of vertical markets I just mentioned: healthcare, government, broadcasting. These are, I think, are the ones that we can look deeper into as well.
All right, Jimmy, you'll have the last word on this. What are markets that you're seeing as possibilities for you guys?
Well, I'm going to agree with Frank that I want to see more education. I want to see more commercial, but that's primarily because that's where I work and that's the spaces I work in. But with a very, very big caution, like he said, there really needs to be an understanding of what the new business mindset is of a lot of those people. And like you hit the nail right on the head when he said that with a lot of these people, good enough is where they want to be, and they're perfectly fine with that, right? Which is interesting because I don't know that they would feel that way about their networks.
No, they would. Unless we IT departments, IT directors get paid bonuses based on uptime. So no,
right.
It's not that.
So why we're not approaching?
Well, that's exactly it, and that's the conversation. I was talking to Chuck Espinosa a few weeks ago. He stopped through here up in Northern California, and I actually think it's something that I would love to see AVIXA start focusing on. And it's huge margins, and it's a huge opportunity for our industry. But I know we're missing the boat on it, because just good enough is a thing, but it ain't going away, right?
Right.
And so our conversation needs to revolve around what is the challenges that these enterprises are experiencing. YT just talked about control. Well, in AVIXA's 2017 Global Market Survey, and I'm looking forward to the 2019 one coming out, and if you never bought it, it's not cheap. It's $5,000 or $6,000, but it's well worth it, because you'll see they called for compound annual growth rate in our industry at 4% per year. That's an acronym CAGR, 4% a year, 2017 to 2022. But they also called out for control to grow 11% per year in that same time period. Yet we're seeing less control. What gives? Because the difference between 4% and 11% is 275% greater growth in the control and automation market, yet touch panels and processors are not being sold to the extent they used to be, especially in 2/3 of the market where it's just good enough.
But so here, hang on.
Where's that coming from?
You're saying, hang on a second. You're saying that there's less control. I would argue that there is actually more control, but less interfaces. I'd agree with you about touch panels, right? But there is actually more control because of the ubiquity of cell phones, because of the ubiquity of mobile, because of the rise of voice. There was actually more control. It's just done in a different way than we're all used to.
And we're taking a system, an AV system of systems. I'm taking my 500 rooms, my 2,000 rooms, my 10,000 rooms, my 25,000 rooms. We had an opportunity to come across 48,000 rooms out of ISC. 48,000 rooms. Those people have a completely different problem than the room. They have a system of systems, and they want to integrate that to their other enterprise systems, their ERP systems, their authentication systems, their across the board. And so being able to take APIs, RESTful APIs, data connectors, and take my aggregate of my audio visual, my meeting room, my classroom experiences, and integrate them up with all my other IT enterprise applications, that's the future. And I'll tell you right now, it's happening today. So it's not coming, it's here. And that's where the market is. And I worry, I'm one of the few guys in my business that actually came from AV. All the others, they're IT people and enterprise software people. I worry that our business is missing the boat on this, and that we're gonna miss the real opportunity as we get our heads around what it really means. Yeah, but that's only in the meeting and classroom space. Stadiums, house of worship, none of that's going away. That's going to continue to be good markets for traditional AV integrators.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up here. We've actually taken really got a chunk of time. I'm glad we did, though, on the first two. So here, real quickly, we'll synopsize this one and give you guys kind of a minute to expound on this. The story comes out of Sound Communications about Riverside, California's emergency operations center, how they're future-proofing. We're going to use this as a kind of a jumping-off point. YT, when you're talking to clients and you're talking to their clients, how are you guys advising them on the best way to future-proof, not just EOCs, but also classrooms, meeting spaces, stadiums, what have you? How is the best way today to future-proof as much as possible an AV system?
Got it. I'm thinking from 2 points. Like, one is from technologist point of view. The second one is from the installation point of view. But for the installation, I think I'll leave it to Jeremy because he's the expert. But for the technology point of view, because right now we are for like all the project. Right now we're just looking at the situations about one thing, like 1080p or 4K. So, like in some of the meeting room or classroom, right now they only have like 1080p sources, but we will see what the customer's budget is like, and we will also talk to them about 4K. For example, like, okay, a video matrix has a scalar building size, so right now even if only have 1080p, sources, you can still scale up to 4K. So that's one of the things that we recommend. The second thing is because when we are talking about our customers, because right now we will talk more than just the Pro AV part. We'll also talk about the power part, because we can help with the PDUs as well as we will make sure that if there's any other control, like if they need USB extension, if they need to control the PC, especially in control room, they will want to control and manage the servers. And the third one is, because when I'm looking at this project, I'll say this is a really good one, and this one is really interesting, because I don't know if you look at if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see a list of all the products.
Yep.
And if you look at right now, they are using a Questron's video matrix that's 32 by 32, and because I just did a really quick calculations on the displays, on the output ports. So right now they are doing a 4x4 video wall, that's 16 displays, and they have another 8 monitors in front of ACs, so that's a total of 24. Well, the good thing is, to be future-proof, because they want to do a wall with 32 displays. So one thing that I think they did a very good job is they've saved the wires, they have the extra spare cables. But if you did a quick calculation, 32 plus 8, that's 40. And that's already over that 32 by 32 video matrix. So, once they're going to do it in the future, they probably will face to the situation where they probably need to cascade another video matrix, or they need to do some DA. So this is another project that we're thinking about if we should go for the traditional circuit-based modular video matrix solutions or the over IP ones. Because for the over IP ones in the future, they just need to add 8 more receivers, then they'll be good. But still, I think it's a very good project. You look at the pictures, the monitors look nice. And one last thing I can mention is, again, if you scroll down to the list of products, you can see there are Questron, Extra, and Kramer. But again, you can see the manufacturers from IT. So for example, Amazon, they have a KVM in there. So again, this control room, actually one of the vertical markets or applications that we see are growing with the control room is, once again, you'll see some of the Pro AV, and you'll see some of the IT or the KVM, either the KVM or the PDU or the USB docking stations. So that's pretty much our thoughts on this project.
All right, Mr. Caldera, how do you best future-proof your clients, sir?
Well, I don't want to say anything bad about this Emergency Operations Center, but I read this article and I thought there's nothing future-proofed about this, right? It's the exact opposite of future-proofing, right? Because for me, future-proofing is about the infrastructure, and I don't mean like power conduit, things like that. I mean the AV infrastructure, right? What's the back-end switching? What's the transport methods? Things like that. Because displays are going to come and go, right? Doesn't matter if it's LED, doesn't matter if it's LCD, doesn't matter what the flat panel, doesn't matter, right? Your sources are going to change. Display port, 8K, 4K, resolutions are going to change, whatever, right? You want to future-proof, you go video over IP. That's it, plain and simple, right? Because once you have if you have a really good IP network, you have a really good network just set up, good switching, good routing, good cabling, you could stick the end pieces on and upgrade those as you need them, right? Doesn't matter how many you have, doesn't matter how many you need. You could have more displays, more sources, 8K, 4K, 16K, 32K, it doesn't matter, right? As long as you got the bandwidth on the backbone of the switches, and all that other stuff will come, right? So if you really want to future-proof, you need to get it on the network, because the network will handle not only your video, your transport, your control, it'll do audio, it'll do everything, right? So any customer of mine that wants to future-proof, that's the conversation that I'm having with them. It's not, I don't care what the display is. I really don't. It's just a matter of how do I get it from point A to point B. And if you want to be worried and concerned about, a network operations center, for example, if I want to bring in cameras, what kind of cameras am I bringing in? They're IP cameras, right? So maybe I can get a wall processor that takes in IP sources directly, so I don't have to go through encoding or decoding or anything like that, right? Let's talk about that and bringing that in. It's the whole, like, we have a network engineer. I mean, we're a small AV company, but now I have a full-time network engineer. 5 years ago, I never would have thought that, right? So that's the conversation I think that needs to be had.
All right, Frank, you'll have the last word on this. How do we future-proof?
I totally agree with Jeremy. And brand names don't matter, respectfully. We should and could be selling an outcome. I'm selling business objective outcomes, period. And so brand names don't matter. And so if I'm going to future-proof, first I'm going to start with software at the heart and the most valuable bit of the whole thing. Because software can evolve. I don't need to replace it or wait for the next box to come out. And everything out on the edge is just an IoT device. And that's the way at least IT looks at these things. It's a thing. So I can switch the edge out as I need to. I can upgrade my microphones, my displays, etc. And I can evolve my platform that everything goes on, and I'm future-proof as you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that is going to do it for us. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for watching. YT Lang from A10, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to be back.
Absolutely. And how do people get a hold of you?
You can find us, A10 Technology, in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can also find myself, YT Lan, on LinkedIn as well.
All right, very good. Mr. Calderic, very good to see you, sir, as always.
Oh, it's great to be on here. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. How do people find you or IAS?
IAStechnology.net, Jeremy_Caldera on the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I think I have all that stuff.
And
just search, you'll find me.
You'll find him, and you'll also find actually him and YT and Frank roaming around and Infocom in just, get this, 3 months' time. That's right, kids. We are under 100 days. Actually, we're as of this recording, we're about 90 days out. So, Mr. Pelkoffer, thank you, sir, as always.
Thank you very much, Tim, Jeremy, YT. Nice to see you guys all.
How do people find you or Utelogy?
Google Utelogy, and it'll give you everything you want to know. UTELOGY.
All right, very good. And Frank's, had a number of good hires here in the last month or so check that out as well. For Tim Albright, don't follow me on the Twitters at this point. I'm not. The Blues are doing okay, so that's why. And football's not here yet, so there's no Bears. But go by the website if you would please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. This program you can find, as well as a host of others, including our other weekly program, looks at the residential side of the AV industry. It's called AVWeek. And a number of other monthlies, including our brand new digital signage show called Digital Signage Digest with Lenore and Lane. So you can check that out. Also, while you're there, check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who support us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek, ISE last month, DSE at the end of this month, and yes, Infocom in about 3 months' time. So check those out. We appreciate them and their support. Also, while you're there, we did something interesting yesterday. We helped stream the very first AVIXA UK Diversity Council meeting. Not council meeting, but their first event. It came to us from London, and our friends Kevin McLaughlin and the guys over and gals over at the Royal Society of Medicine. So you can check that out actually on our Facebook page. So check all that out and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This is all the time we have for AV Week.